Welcome to Carnivore Wellness. My name is Rebecca, and today I want to talk about intestinal healing on the carnivore diet. I've been carnivore for over a year now. I have had significant digestive healing that has translated into overall better health. I believe that my poor digestion and that my compromised intestinal system was a big part of why I have had poor health throughout my adulthood. Let's wind it way back and set the stage for why I believe my digestive system was initially compromised. So back in middle school, I developed TMJ. And when I would sleep at night, I clenched my jaw so tight, and that pulled on these muscles and ligaments in my jaw and translated into daytime headaches. And I would come home, and by the end of the day, I'd have a splitting headache every single day. So I would respond to a headache, as many people at that time, and probably still do, did. And that is to go take an NSAID and, so a Tylenol or an ibuprofen, or I'd often take a Leave. And so these NSAIDs, a class of medication, and while it is great for its pain relieving properties, it is also very damaging to the lining of your gut. It can create these junctures in between the endothelial cells that form up the barrier of your digestive tract, and that can lead to the formation of leaky gut. Rather than everything staying in your digestive tract and in your intestines as it moves through your body, little tiny particles can escape directly into your bloodstream. But over time, as more of these little particles that have no business being in your blood make their way into your blood, that can lead to widespread inflammation that can show up as many other issues. I pretty much had NSAIDs every single day through middle school and high school, and then I went to college and partied way too much. Further compromised my digestive system, I'm sure, with a very poor diet that was heavy in alcohol. And let's bear in mind, when you drink too much alcohol and you're not eating a good diet and you're not hydrated, you wake up in the morning with what? A hangover. And how do you knock out a hangover real quick? You take some NSAIDs. You take one of those, either Tylenol, ibuprofen, aspirin, something like that, to knock that headache out so you can go out and do it again. So that only served to further damage my gut. A highlight of my younger days was when I decided to hike the length of the Appalachian Trail. I started in Georgia and I hiked over 2,000 miles up to Mount Katahdin in Maine. I enjoyed it greatly, but one of the things that I needed to do was to filter my water or treat my water. I regularly treated my water. However, I ran out of the my water treatment method, and instead of doing the right thing and boiling my water, I just thought, I'll just risk it. Surely I'll be fine. Against my better judgment, or what should have been better judgment, I decided to drink untreated water. Now, at first, this didn't seem to be an issue, but before long, I realized this was a major mistake because I developed Giardia. It's also known as beaver fever or traveler's disease. Most commonly, it's called traveler's disease, but it is a protozoa that sets up shop in your digestive system and makes it very difficult for your body to obtain proper nutrients from the food that you eat, assuming you're eating the right kind of foods to start with. I wasn't. I suffered with several rounds of bouts of, there's no other way to put it, liquid diarrhea. Basically, anything I ate went straight through my system and came right back out. So not only was this very uncomfortable to have to deal with while out hiking, but it robbed me of energy. I wasn't able to get the energy I needed, so I was having to, force myself to eat more than I even had the hunger for, because I knew that my body wasn't able to take in most of what I was putting in. And it definitely lowered my stamina, it lowered my energy. It was a big challenge. And, I kept hoping it would get better on its own, and it didn't. I, found a way to push through to the end of my hike. I will be honest, I did skip a significant section at the end because I could tell that my body was at the point where it was not going to be able to do much more. So skipped up ahead, hiked the last 100 miles with a wonderful group of folks that I'd met previously on the trail, and finished out my hike, came home, and got myself to the doctor because that's what I needed to do. I knew I needed medication for this. So I was given this medication called Flagyl. This stuff is like bringing out, AK-47 to take out a fly. It's like that. It will knock out every single thing that is living in your system. So and the good thing is it also takes out this Giardia that is really notoriously hard to get rid of. But it took out all of the good bacteria and that balance of, the microbiome in my digestive system as well. I very quickly realized I was not able to digest food even as I had before I'd gotten Giardia. I couldn't tolerate dairy of any kind. That didn't stop me from eating it. I would still, have way too much ice cream, but I would pay for it dearly. And I knew that I had to cut out dairy in any form. So I started to do that, and I saw a little bit of improvement. But I was still including gluten, which at the time I didn't think that I needed to avoid gluten. I thought that was only if you were celiac and couldn't have gluten that would be an issue. But looking back, I think that probably would have helped tremendously if I had removed that from my diet. And I know that it was probably the gluten because I would make a sandwich for, my lunch, and I'd have, whole grain, whole wheat bread. And I made sure there was no milk in it, no milk products in the formulation of this bread. And yet I would still have the intestinal cramping and the very painful and gross smelling gas later in the day as if I had eaten milk. So I missed that connection early on. But I just did my best to continue. I thought, I just have stinky toots and there's not much I can do about it. This is just the way I am now. I finally found a live probiotic that did make a difference. Within about a month, I noticed that these bouts of digestive upset and the related toilet visits that came about with those, and also let's be real, the stench of the gas that emanated from my body, those decreased. It was not gone, okay? That probiotic did not solve it. It was a good Band-Aid, but it wasn't enough to get me back to a state of good health. And then I had to learn this lesson twice. So we went hiking again in the summer of 2016, and we attempted another through hike of a much shorter trail on the Colorado Trail. We got about halfway through, and I woke up one morning, went to go dig my cat hole. That's like a little hole that you take care of your business in. And as soon as I completed that activity, I realized I have Giardia again. And there had been a time, like just probably a few days prior, that we had run out of our water treatment. And instead of boiling the water as we should have, we drank untreated water. And so here I was again with Giardia, not even that long after having just barely found a Band-Aid for my poor digestive system. So I ended up having Giardia again. And I slimmed down really quick. Now, old me was super happy to see that I was finally skinny, but guess what? It was because I was so poorly nourished. Nothing I ate was able to be digested. As in, if I ordered a pizza and it had toppings on it, I could tell you exactly what was on that pizza later. Graphic, I know, but it's just the reality of how poor my digestive system was operating at that time. So once again, I had to take another type of medicine. This time I said I didn't want Flagyl because I knew that it was, very damaging. So they gave me another medication. I forget the name of it, but it was actually an antifungal, I believe. Doesn't matter. It wiped everything out all over again too. So here I was yet again within just a couple of years of each other, back to square one as far as my digestive system goes. Looking back, I now see that the anxiety that I started experiencing within just a couple of months of having treatment for this second round of Giardia was a result of my poor digestive health. I ended up going to the emergency room because I was having a panic attack to the point that I wasn't sure that I was going to make it. I thought I was potentially dying. My vision was blurred. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't really formulate sentences to express how I was feeling. I didn't know any other way to handle anxiety but to address it in the medical field. The doctor wrote me a prescription for some anti-anxiety medications. I never had that filled because I didn't want to start taking medications for anxiety, but I continued to really struggle with anxiety. During that time, I was also still drinking relatively heavily, and I don't think that did anything to help me. I used it as a coping mechanism, but it wasn't one that was really serving me in the long term. I just want to emphasize here that I really do believe that anxiety surfaced for me because of the poor digestive health and the state of my digestive system prior. They call your microbiome, your gut, the second brain, because there is a pathway, the vagus nerve, that travels from your gut to your brain, and it sends signals and communicates with your brain based on what is in your digestive system at any given point in time. And I did not have a good, healthy balance of microbes in my gut. And I know I had leaky gut. I know I had these disruptions in the junctures in between the endothelial cells and the lining of my gut. Things were leaking literally from my gut into my blood and causing widespread inflammation. Poor digestion definitely correlates with poor mental health. To address my digestive health, I went back to that live probiotic. And it helped some, but again, it was just a Band-Aid. It didn't do enough of what I needed to have full healing. I limped along. I got married and then we got pregnant. And then I, for some reason, read a horrible book that told me that if I was pregnant, I should definitely be vegan. So I kept out pretty much all the dairy. I didn't have any meat for a large portion of my pregnancy, which is such a shame. I ended up giving birth and then very quickly developing postpartum anxiety. And that anxiety stayed with me until I got pregnant with my second kid. After I had him, depression really set in, depression and anxiety. And pretty much I'd been living with anxiety and depression up until I started a ketogenic diet in 2022. But that wasn't even enough to swing the balance in the right direction until I eliminated all the foods that were still hurting my body and went on a carnivore diet. And then I started experiencing a lot of digestive healing. And I'd love to really talk about what digestive healing looks like on a carnivore diet, because my path was a little different from what I saw mirrored in a lot of my peers who were also going through this initial transition. So oftentimes when you start a carnivore diet, it is expected, and you are told by others, to expect loose stool the first few weeks. And there's a couple reasons for this. One being your body isn't used to making enough bile to process the higher amounts of fat. So it takes time for your body to be able to process and make enough bile to then break down those fats. Otherwise, they kind of just run through you. And so that sends you running to the toilet frequently. Also, you're suddenly not having fiber in your diet. So there's less things tying up the excess water. And again, without that bile breaking things down, like it just kind of runs through. And it's totally normal. It's a kind of unpleasant part of the transition process. But for most folks, it usually subsides within about 2 weeks, maybe sometimes 3 weeks. But for me, this period of time of having loose stool lasted for about 3.5 to 4 months before I started seeing things firm up on a more consistent basis. And even then, I would still have a few bouts where maybe I'd overdo the fat and would have a loose stool. So it took a long time for me to get to a point where I was having the kind of digestive normalcy and consistency that others experienced much sooner in their journeys. I know that these frequent loose stools and this disruption in my digestive system was related to how damaged my intestines were from the NSAIDs and then the 2 rounds of Giardia and resulting medications, and doing myself no favors as far as my diet and lifestyle were concerned, as I continued to eat, a lot of gluten, a lot of dairy, a lot of carbs, so much sugar, and then alcohol. I had a lot more healing that had to take place before I was able to get to a place of normalcy. And then I will say I went through a period of time where I fasted and did several longer fasts. Fasting can be great, and it definitely did a lot to heal my gut. I've done a video talking about my experience fasting, and there were a lot of pros, but there were a lot of cons for me because I over fasted. I did not take the right cues from my body at the time to know that enough was enough and that I should have stopped. Again, I'll link that video down below for you to check out if that's something you're interested in. All to say that when I did these longer fasts, 24 plus hour fasts, and I did several of them over the course of a month, I noticed that my digestive system was greatly improved. I pretty much, since that point, since I did those longer fasts, have not had any loose stools. I am also able to digest dairy, whereas before, even when I would try to have a little bit of dairy here and there on the carnivore diet, which I largely kept off the table, just knowing my own proclivity to have issues with my digestion. I talk about this in that video that I referenced here about over fasting and kind of what happened after that and how I got back on track. But I leaned on dairy in order to remain carnivore during that time because I was struggling so much with cravings and with my appetite. But the dairy did not affect me in a very negative way. I mean, it didn't make me feel my best. I will be very clear about that. But I did not have the same kind of bubbling, like bloating feeling. between the carnivore diet, which I think is the number one best help. I do think the fasting kind of took it up another level, and I just want to be really clear about that. I'm not anti-fasting. I am just very pro-fasting for you. Again, I'll link that video down below. I think it's full of really great information, especially if you have any interest in fasting or in making sure that you're doing it in a way that's supportive of your hormones. I've been carnivore for over a year. I don't have digestive issues. I don't get bloated. I don't have gas. I do not have anxious thoughts and feelings to the extent that I did, and I don't have depressive thoughts and feelings to the extent that I did. By and large, I feel very good. There are, of course, still, responding to and managing reactions of life's ups and downs. But I would not characterize myself as someone who is plagued by anxiety and depression today. I also do not consider myself to have poor digestion anymore. I very much live in the truth that I have a background of very poor digestion and compromised intestinal health. But carnivore has been such a gift for me in reclaiming that health and healing, because my body can now take in the nutrients, which I'm giving it the right stuff now. I'm eating a meat-based diet, very rich in high fats, animal fats that my body needs. And that's where I get my energy from. I'm also getting enough protein every day. And that is wonderful for giving my body the building blocks to repair. And now for me to be at a point where I am thriving and, doing a great job maintaining this new level of revived health. So my story probably is not exactly like yours. I really hope you haven't had Giardia twice. If you have, I am super curious. If you've ever dealt with Giardia, please comment down below. I want to know more about what others have gone through with this. And then also with your digestive health, do you have a history of a compromised gut? Do you think you have leaky gut? And if so, how has it been for you since identifying that as a problem? What have you tried? Have you tried the carnivore diet? And how long did it take you to start seeing normal, consistent stools versus, that way too loose and frequent, bowel behavior? So I'm just so curious. I want to know, and I think it's great to share. I know sometimes people don't like toilet talk, and that's totally fine if it's not everyone's cup of tea. But considering that our digestive health really lays the foundation for the rest of our health and our body's ability to process these good nutrients that we give it, I think it's a conversation worth having. So I'd love to hear your take on it. Comment down below, or you can find me on Instagram at Carnivore Wellness. I also have a blog I'm building up, www.carnivorewellness.com. Again, thank you so much for your time, for giving me your ear to listen to a little bit of my story. I hope some of it resonates with you. If it does, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. I guess that's it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for having this chat with me, and I will see you next time. Again, my name is Rebecca. This is Carnivore Wellness, and I'm here to share my story and connect with others in this carnivore community. So thank you again. Y'all have a great day.